Grace and peace, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Legacy Builders series. I am your host, Ace Rando. If you guys are coming on into the broadcast, I want you to share with your followers. I'll begin to share on YouTube, share on Facebook. We have a phenomenal guest that's coming on tonight. I am indeed an honor for this legacy builder to be on with us. But before we get started into the show, as always, I want to come on with a motive thought, and I was just kind of having a prep moment with my guests coming on, and just to hear a tidbit of her story, even though she's getting ready to come on with us, is really an inspiration. And we are still, and I mention this often, we are in a pandemic. We're dealing with different issues that's going on in life. However, my question I'm going to ask you is, are you going to allow it to drive you, or are you going to allow it to stop you? I had a scenario, some of you might have heard me make mention of this friend of mine that was that was dealing with the ailment in their body, and they were on the verge of giving up and throwing in the towel. But they listened to one of the lives from the series, and it inspired her to get up and to say that there's still life on the other side of this. We get so caught up on the negative side of the why it's happening to us versus being focused on the positive why. And usually through trials, through situations, through anguish, through sickness, births some sort of inspiration. Is either going to birth something new. Maybe you might have had somebody that was lost by a specific disease, and you decide that you're going to go to medical school, and you end up being the one to come up for the cure for the thing that killed the person that you lost. It's always going to be something that's going to birth some sort of level of inspiration, or something that's going to drive your focus to a whole nother level once you go through some sort of trauma. And so I want you to be inspired regardless of what it is that you're going through, regardless of the low funds that you have, regardless of the lack of job, regardless of the diminishing in your business. I want you to be inspired to try something else. Do something new. Do something different. Be inspired to go after something that you might have put off. Maybe you had a gift or talent that you already used before, and maybe this might be the season that it might flourish. Maybe you might have a dream or a vision that you put energy into, and it just didn't work the time in the season that you were doing it then. But I implore you to go after it now. Try it now. What would it hurt? Nothing beats a failure but a try. If first you don't succeed, try again. And this could be your moment. This can be your time. But if you are allowing your life's trauma to cause you to be limited in your thought process, to make you in a place to stay in depression, and to keep you limited, and to keep you from being focused, then the thing that is the trauma will cause death to come upon you. And so I want you to be encouraged as you listen to these legacy builders that come on this series, on the different episodes that come on, because they too have been through trauma. They too have been through life's journey, but something, a light bulb moment came on in their mind to say that, you know what? I have to do something different. I have to do something new. I have to do something advanced, and I have to get up from here. I can't just sit here any longer. I can't allow my life to waste away. I use one of the scriptures that Moses said, Lord, let me count the days that I might apply wisdom. Let me be wise in my time and not waste billable hours away. I call it billable hours because these are moments that you can actually be making money. You can be creating legacy. You can go after your dreams. You can be traveling the country. You can be inspiring the world. So use this time, use it wisely. Use this time wisely. And be spiritual, be like the sons of Issachar and discern the time and the seasons and move in the timing of seasons that's upon your life right now. So I want you to be encouraged as you listen to these legislators, to let them inspire you. Come with your pens and papers. Come with an open heart and an open ear and an open brain, ready to listen to their words of wisdom because they've been through it. They've been through it. And yes, they've been through a lot of the things you've been through. But I guarantee you, if you listen to their story, it's going to boil up on the inside of you. You're going to be encouraged. You're going to be inspired. You're going to be enlightened. You're going to be empowered. And so I want you to be empowered by this legacy builder that's coming on tonight. I'm not going to say much about her. I'm going to let this intro video go ahead and introduce her. And we're going to bring her on right after this.
Legacy Builder, Madam CEO, Tyear Wilson-McCrary. CEO of Madam CEO Incorporated, which offers services in business coaching, all business development, product creation. Also CEO of the Crown Jewels Collection. Stay tuned as we experience the journey of how Madam CEO built her legacy.
Good evening, my friend. Thank you for coming on with us on tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It really, really is. I'm so excited about what you are doing and what you're bringing to people around the world. Because I'm not going to say this is local. This is big time. And so this is a big deal. And I'm so grateful that you are actually answering the call of God and what He's called you from Old Testament to New Testament. Every facet of life, and that's to live and be a legacy and leave a legacy. So thank you.
Indeed. To do this a little bit, I have watched a lot of your lives and watched a lot of your ministry. And you have definitely been an inspiration to me. And just as I said during our pre to the show, I am indeed an honor to have you. I'm glad that you were able to come on and share your. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great. So I do apologize, guys. We've been having some little technical glitches here, so just bear with us in the broadcast. We're gonna keep moving forward.
This works, and today, yes.
Indeed. So tell us a little bit about your history. Let's kind of dive into where you're from, so that our followers can know where you're from, and then where you are currently.
Okay, I'm an adopted daughter, all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. It wasn't until maybe actually last year, I found out that I had 9 brothers and sisters, which is a story to itself. But I'm Cleveland, Ohio.
Indeed.
I was raised by people who were born in 1912 and 1925, so they had a different perspective of a whole lot of things. But they raised me up to be an entrepreneur because
Indeed.
where they came from in that time, there were no options. It wasn't about little options. There were no options. And so they learned how to be philanthropic. They learned how to be real estate owners. They learned how to be real estate developers. They learned how to be business owners. And they passed that to me, not because they thought it was the best thing for me, but because they said that's the only thing for you. And so I was very, very blessed to have those parents who put me in everything, and they pushed me to make sure that I was never doing an average life. That was just one of those things you didn't do. You didn't cuss in the house. You didn't lie to your parents. You weren't disrespectful, and you could not be average. And so that was the thing that I was brought up with. As I grew up, of course, I had a private education, and decided against my mother's wishes to own a funeral home, that I was going to be an attorney, and I was going to be a singer. And so that's what I ended up going that way. And God said, no, that's not what you're going to do. And so I ended up going back for a little while to get myself through school, went to school to become a pastor. And then I met my husband. We've been married 27 years. This year? Yeah, I think it's this year. We've been married 27 years and almost 2 months, I think. We got married so many times, listen, that long, but we have children that we absolutely adore, and we push them. My husband is an retired executive, and he now runs one of the companies that I have, so successful at doing that. And I am just so excited because we have journeyed even in between the time of us meeting and where we are right now. We pastored a church, actually 2 locations, for 17 and a half years. We closed our church down going on 5 years now. And we have been embracing this thing called building legacy, doing what it is that we have created outside of the church realm. And it has opened up so many doors, so many opportunities for us to reach massive amounts of people, and really, really help change their life and change their mindset about how God wants them to prosper. And prosperity, not just with money. Whole life prosperity. And to really, really focus on the purpose and get in alignment with that. So I now own Madam CEO, which is a small business advisory, profitability, and coaching firm here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I help people take their ideas and I turn them into cash makers. That's what I do. So whether it is, just taking one idea, or here's the thing: if you give me one idea, I'm gonna pull 5 more out of it. So that's
absolutely
to do that, and really make sure that my clients are taken care of. I've written a few books, and we are having a good time. And then I started another company at the end. This is 2020 has been so crazy. At the end of last year, I started another company, and it is a custom bag company. And we create really, really beautiful travel accessories for women. And we're coming out with something for men at the end of the year. And that's called Crown Jewels Collection. And then the one I said that my husband is running is a government contract company for minorities. And so those things keep me busy, along with my 3 grandbabies. Yeah.
Wow. and I hear you. You have a lot going on, and that's amazing. When you are a legacy builder, you keep, it makes you stay busy. And so I want to kind of we're going to dive into breaking down some of the things that you just mentioned, and I'm going to kind of go back over your history. You mentioned that you're from the Midwest. We both are from the Midwest, so that says a lot. That some legacy builders come out of the Midwest. I'm out of Chicago. You out of Cleveland. Indeed. Some great visionaries, people that think outside of the box, and that's one of the things that drew me to you, is because not only are you a bishop in the Lord's church, however, you are about having holistic balance in your life, living the full aspect of the kingdom of God, just not only spiritually, but being healthy, being financially stable, having legacy to be able to pass down to your children's children, which is technically a mandate. Even in the Jewish community, and I mention that because actually through my bloodline on my father's side, I'm actually part Jewish, and you have to leave an excuse me, an inheritance for your children's children. And so, interestingly enough, you said you grew up with parents that were older, but they already knew about building and creating legacy, and they seeded that into you. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, kind of going back over your childhood. Was that something that you easily embraced, or did you kind of shun away from it because it was so not easily in front of you, but it was an example before you that can possibly cause you to go a different direction?
Well, that's all I saw. So
Yeah.
when that's all I saw, that's all you know. And my mother was very clear. We're doing this for two reasons: for purpose and for money. You got to be able to eat. And this lifestyle that I've created and your dad has created for you, it requires money. And the level of money that it requires, you're not going to be able to get it out of a job. You got to create
Indeed.
your own. And so that has always stuck with me. And so I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. That makes a lot of money. She's like, okay. No, it's not. You can own her conversation with me would be like, you can own a law firm. And then I said, well, I'm going to do hair while I'm in school. Okay, fine. But you're not opening up a beauty shop and standing behind no chair, are you? You're going to own the beauty salon, right? And so that mindset was like, ooh, okay.
Right.
Together. She taught me to be big. She taught me to be big on purpose, because you cannot be average and leave something significant, not just for your children's children, but for the world. And so my mom always had this world impact kind of mentality. And when my father died when I was 9 years old, she drilled it in me. She's like, it's me and you. You're going to make something out of your life. You're not going to be average, and you're going to be in control. And being an only child, you kind of, they use the word spoiled. I use well loved. But you come up with this mindset where it really is just you. So if you don't make it work, you can't blame it on your siblings or your cousins. You got to be about you and your business. And God has always talked to me since I was 9 years old, always been operations, always. Since I was 9 years old, the day my father died, the prophetic office, gifting, kicked in for me. And so I've always been, some people call it intuitive. I've always known what the will of God is and the word of God with me. God was for my life. And even though I wanted to go a different direction, he's like, okay, well, you finished? Okay, come back over here and let's build this thing. Let's build this business. And that's what I did.
Wow. Amazing. To have that. And then, it's kind of interesting how, your parents would kind of lure you into, but, to a direction and make you think, you were thinking from one perspective, but she was thinking, beyond that. Well, you're trying to work it, why don't you staff it so that it functions apart from you? And you just pretty much, manage your managers and let it build momentum, and you collect your money. And I understand exactly where you're coming from. I actually, interestingly enough, came from a house that was raised in the beauty industry and the salon industry. And my mother herself was, cosmetologist, but also went to school for instructor. She's managed people's salons. And even myself, I have tried to push her to go to the place of ownership without having to work it, unless you have your few people that they're your faithful few, and you decided as a hobby you want to do it in your spare time. Sure, you can have your own private room and do it at your leisure. However, the objective is not to work it, but to let people work for you. To be a CEO, literally.
Yeah. You have to be able to. If your vision is not scalable, it's not big enough.
Indeed, absolutely, and I live by that as well. Especially when God is giving you something, it's outside of your reach. That means that you can't do it apart from Him. And so, and I'm like you. I think, when somebody brings me something, I'm always thinking 50 different ways then what they can do to build it, to scale it, to and enlarge it. They're thinking local, I'm thinking global. they're thinking, a mom and pop shop. I'm thinking mass distribution around the world, in that regard. So I too share that same mindset. Now, growing up, having that mindset of entrepreneurship, and then you come into the church. Was there a battle between your spiritual and your natural when you have so much of the church hinged upon that our lives is to suffer with him, and it's easy for the cow to jump through an eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven mentality and think that we're supposed to be broke. How did you deal with challenges of coming from an entrepreneur family and coming into the salvation, into the church, and even into being a bishop? How did you deal with that in the church?
Well, I never did. And let me tell you why. My parents were the ones that when there was a little church in the neighborhood, honestly, there was a little church in the neighborhood. It's called Union Grove Baptist Church on 8932 Quincy Avenue, right across from Caribou Theater. And one of the only Black theaters in America, the first Black theaters in America. And they needed a pastor. My parents were on the board of the church, and they financed the building. So my parents always told me, you solution, and your money, your resources, your hard work, it blends with the will of God. God gives you the managerial responsibility to make sure that his word does not stop, that the community is always, their needs are always met, and that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So for me, it was not a thing. As I became a pastor all those years, being a part of our three focuses was financial stability, and we don't mean just being able to get by. No, we're talking about the seven streams. We're talking about 7 mountains. We talked about all those things. We talked about building business from day one in our business and in our church. And it was never a thing where it was a silence. There was never a thing where we're gonna be broke. And see, I went to private school. My private school was a Catholic school, and so they take a vow of poverty. When they mentioned that, I was like, oh no. That's not the will of God. Indeed. You made up, but that's not what the Bible said. And so literally, I would challenge the teachers and the nuns and the brothers at the church all the time. I got put out of Catholic church because of it, because of my mouth. Wow. Because I knew what the word of God says. And although that might be fine what you want to do, but don't convince me that's what I need to do. Me being broke, me being poor, it says the poor you will have with you always, but it did not tell me that I was going to be one of those poor. And I understand poor is not the money, it's the mentality, because whatever you believe is what you pursue. That's what you do. And so for me, that was not an option. My parents always taught me, you need land. You need to be able to finance the church. You need to be able to be a part of the scholarship. You need to be a debutante. You need to be this. And this is again in a time when I was more in the 60s. It was still rough. It was still, women can't vote. Black people don't matter. White this and color this. But my parents, they made our responsibility within our community. You be the best of your community. You be the anchor, one of the anchors that God uses to make sure that when people have a problem, they know they can come to you, and you will teach them how no longer have that problem and help be the solution in various ways. And so for me, I never saw that. So when my husband and I got married and we decided, we were going to start a ministry, it was never a thing of you can't have, let me tell you this. I had one young lady, God rest her soul, who I really, really loved very, very dearly, looked up to an older woman at the time. And she told me, she says, my mother, she says, when you go to school, I went to seminary. She says, when you go to school, you can't take that old car. She says, what has God been telling you? I said, he's been showing me this Mercedes. I ain't never had a Mercedes in my life. And before I knew it, my mother went and she went and bought me one off the showroom floor. She said, when you go and represent the kingdom of God, don't go representing looking any old kind of way. Go representing him to the people that he sends you to the best of your ability. And so God used her to give me the car. I didn't ask her. She gave it to me. Wow. All right. And when I got the car, I remember taking it to the church, and because she made me get rid of my old car. She says, where you going? You got to look where you're going. Look like where you're going. And so when I went to church that Sunday, I never forget. the lady, she said to me, she said, you know, you're not going to be able to be flashy, and you're not going to be able to have to sit up there and, you know, speak all that, the level of, this is what she said, the level of English that you speak and all those flashy clothes, you're going to have to get rid of that car. And it burdened me that in order for me to be accepted, I've got to low grade myself. No, my job is to go into a place and set a different standard and show you how to get to that standard so that we can all do well.
Yes.
But that's not what I saw from other people.
Yes.
God, I saw it from my parents. And my parents was like, you want a pony? You gonna go buy one. You want to go buy one? You better start a business, because the company ain't gonna make it.
Right.
I mean, the company you work for or that you want to work for ain't gonna pay you enough. So there's certain things they put in front of me. You want this?
Right.
You got to work for it. You got to create an income for that. And you work that income,
yes,
that idea until it creates the income. And you bring others along, called employees, along with you. And as you grow them. You don't just keep them where they are. You grow them and you teach them how to run their own companies. Like even now, if you're a part of Madam CEO, if you are an employee of Madam CEO, my coaching company, you have to have at least one company that's verifiable with the state, paying taxes, that I can see that you're actually running. I want to see that you got customers. I want to see that you're making money. Because how can you come to work for me and you can't work for yourself first? And so that's how I did it. Hopefully that answered your question.
Wow, that's amazing. No, it's perfect. And the reason why I say that is because everybody has not been raised the same way or went through the same experiences,
right,
especially of those that have been up in the church. You know, I'm listening to your history to see that your parents started the foundation to not even allow the spirit of tradition to even fluster into your mind when it comes down to poverty mindset or to think broke or think limited when God called us to minister to the poor. How can you minister to the poor when you're poor? You know, how can you heal the sick when you're sick? You know, it's counterproductive. It just doesn't make sense. And so they didn't even allow that mindset.
Right. They taught me to be a fixer.
Taught you to be a fixer.
Just like your Father in heaven looked out on nothing and said, we got a problem. Let's fix this. He's made you in his image and likeness to be a fixer. It is our obligation to fix whatever he did not see as good. So when I see something that is not good, as long as God gives me the go ahead, it is my responsibility, along with others, to fix it. And that's what I do.
Wow. So since you started off being a young entrepreneur, kind of give us an idea of the businesses that you had. I know you mentioned that you did hair, and I heard you through some of your shows that you did that. But kind of give us like a history of your entrepreneurship growing up as a child, or even in your high school years or young adult life.
As a child, I wasn't allowed to do anything other than go to school and perform. So my mother put me in theater. And in theater, I learned, I grew, and I got paid for standing on stage and singing my little heart out and trying not to fall off stages and meeting all my cues and doing all the right things. And I got paid handsomely for it. And so she made sure of that. She was indeed a momager before I knew what a momager was.
Wow.
And then when it got time for me to go to school, she says, how are you going to sustain yourself in school? And because I didn't want to live in a dorm, she said, well, your only other choice is to buy a house. And so guess what I did? I bought a house because I couldn't live in the dorm.
Wow.
I wasn't going to. I wanted my own because that's what she had instilled in me. So I bought my first home the year I went off to school. And I did hair to sustain myself, and I did makeup. And so after that, shortly after that got married. And my husband and I, we started the First Lady Hat Collection, which was actually the first African American female-owned millinery company to ever be held in the Nordstrom's department store group. And so that was really wonderful. And so then we went from retail to wholesale, and we made them for different stores around the country. And we carried hats that you would see in, Philip Treacy or anybody else that you would see in England at the Ascots. We carried those, and we were one of very, very few in the country, and the only African American owned one.
Wow.
And then we sold that to another African American owner, entrepreneur, and we went full time into ministry. Like I said, we did that for 17 and a half years. And then when it was time to shut down the ministry, not because anything was wrong, there was no scandal, there was no debt, there was none of that stuff. Everybody was like, "Why are you doing that?" We knew that it was time to go back into the business world.
Right.
And that's what we did. And we have literally done business in Dubai, in South Africa, here in the United States, literally around the globe. And I'm so grateful for the doors of obedience through entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That God has given to us, that we can go and reach tens of thousands of people simultaneously, much like we're doing today, but we do it online and offline. So it's pretty amazing.
Wow. That's amazing. Funny enough, my father, even though I didn't really have a relationship with him much growing up, but one of the things I do remember about him is he had a hat stand at like a kiosk in a mall some years ago, back when I was a kid. And so when you were explaining about the hats, it just kind of took me back to that. But interesting how you built this hat business to the point that it was international, and then you sold it. And most people don't understand about an exit strategy. They think, well, this is my baby, I got to hold on to it. And they exactly. And so I just want to kind of have you to dive into that briefly before we get more later into your depth into, what you do as Madam CEO. But I want to kind of touch on that for a moment about how you came up with the mindset of the exit strategy to sell it to someone else that took the reins from there.
Well, I learned from entrepreneurs, successful multi-million dollar Jewish entrepreneurs that I was around. That you don't throw your business away, you sell it, because if it was worth keeping, then it's worth either brokering, leasing, or selling. And I knew that what God was calling us to
Indeed.
was not going to allow me the time to do what it is that I was doing at that level. And so we sold the company. Something you said, a lot of people think that is my baby, and that's the reason why God does not necessarily push your business like he could, because you're looking at it as yours and not his.
Right.
It's a vehicle for you. Is what he envisioned for you. And when he gives
Indeed.
you a vision, he gives you all kinds of strategies. I remember one day, and I'm sure you probably heard me say this, I would pray before we started the hat company. I said, God, I need a multi-million dollar